This is Hadean Tactics. Hadean Tactics is something that is a combination of things that I've individually played before, but together create kind of a unique formula that I've never actually seen exactly. So this is a fusion of several different things. At first, it is a deck-building roguelite a la Slay the Spire, and it has a lot of Slay the Spire-ish elements in it. However, that's not all that it is, because it's also fused with some auto-battler elements, along with some tactics RPG-style elements as well. So it's just a whole bunch of different stuff sort of crammed together, and a pretty unique take on the deck-building formula. So to start with, you will select a hero, although the first thing that's different is that you aren't just one character. Your hero does matter a lot, but they're not the only one. You are actually amassing a party, so you will start with your hero as well as two basic Draugr units that you can command to fight for you. And as you go throughout your adventure, it will be on a Slay the Spire style node-based map, and some of these nodes allow you to upgrade or recruit new units that you can have waiting in the wings. You can actually recruit more units than you can have on the field at any given time, and then at any time while you're on the map, you can just swap them out. So that's actually really useful later on, because you may have a unit that has really low health, so you want to swap them out with something waiting in the wings that has higher health and things of that nature. And there are also upgradable units, but we'll get into how that works in just a second, because all of this is focused around the idea of these alliances. Every unit, including your hero, has an alliance, at least one, sometimes multiple. And an alliance is sort of the group that it belongs to, and each alliance represents a different passive capability that they bring to the battlefield. And the whole idea behind how to actually get good at the game is to stack these alliances together into good combinations that synergize well and create powerful effects. Every unit also has at least one special ability that they can cast, and they passively gain mana throughout the battle, and when the gauge gets full, they will automatically cast these abilities. And the cool thing about this is different creatures can belong to different alliances, and the alliance that they belong to actually determines which of that creature's different castable skills it will have. So each type of creature actually has different skills, and depending on which alliance it generates as, it'll have different ones. And as you go throughout the map, you'll be able to upgrade your hero with either increasing the tier of the alliance they belong to, which will increase the power of their activatable skill, as well as add a second and even a third alliance instead, which will give you, of course, the benefits of those new alliances, the passive benefits, as well as new activatable skills that will combine with what you already have. So this is where most of the sort of stacking of the game actually takes place, because as we know, these sorts of games are about stacking passive effects together to create a big, powerful hero unit that can take down anything. But in this case, it's about stacking these passive effects of your entire party together to create a more well-rounded party that can handle various different things. I actually really like this alliance system. I think it's a cool idea. I think it adds a lot of flavor to the units, since different units can belong to different alliances, and it also affects their active skills. And I like how varied the different alliance bonuses actually are. You may have one that increases the mana gauges of every single unit on the field, every allied unit that is, when you cast certain types of cards. Or you may have one that makes it to where whenever that unit is attacked for the very first time in a battle, they gain a bunch of haste and lifesteal for a couple of seconds and things like that. So there are tons of alliances to choose from, and it's all about stacking these up and making them powerful. And they do actually stack together as well, so if you have multiple creatures in your party with the same alliance, that alliance's benefits will be magnified. Now, the way the combat works is kind of fascinating, because it's a sort of a combination of like a turn-based tactics RPG and a real-time auto-battler. It's sort of both in a way that creates kind of like a real-time with pause sort of idea. At the beginning of battle, you will see a big grid, and you can position any of your units on your side of the grid anywhere that you want to determine where they're going to start for that battle. You'll also be given some energy and a hand of cards, and you can of course play these cards using that energy during this phase. However, you don't have to play them all right now if you don't want to. You will keep this hand as well as the energy that you haven't spent until a certain amount of time has elapsed. And all you have to do is press play, and time will start to flow, and then the battle will actually take place in real time. But it won't take place in real time forever. After about 7 seconds have passed, it will stop again. You will refresh your energy and get a whole new hand of cards. So effectively, one turn is 7 seconds long. and you can stop at any point during that 7 seconds and play other cards you may have left in your hand as long as you have the energy left for them. But once that 7 seconds is up, then you will discard your hand, draw a new one, get fresh energy and stuff like that. So this is a really interesting combination. Like I said, I've never really seen one of these games do this formula before. As far as I'm aware, this is an entirely new way of doing this, an entirely new concept for the whole roguelite deck building thing, is combining it with this big auto-battling tactics RPG sort of heady mixture. The deck building aspect pretty much works like you would think, where depending on the hero you're playing, you have various different cards that you can draw from, and every time you complete a battle or do certain events or go to a shop, you can add new cards to your hand, as well as remove cards for a cost to sort of optimize your build. And there are all sorts of different effects on these cards that you could think of, from doing direct damage to certain enemies to buffing the units on your side or debuffing the enemy side, laying traps that you can then activate whenever you want during the 7 seconds that you have, or even summoning entirely new units. This makes the deck building part of this game a little bit harder than your usual deck builder, in my opinion, because it's not just about building a deck that is effective, it's about building a deck that's effective with the other creatures you have in your party at that time. And that might change depending on what you're doing. You know, maybe you have a super powerful tanky creature, so you want a lot of taunt cards and things to make sure that enemies focus on them. Maybe you have a whole bunch of weak, like glass cannon creatures, so you want lots of armor buffs and things to keep them alive for longer. It's all very much dependent on what you're actually rolling around with. This would probably be a good time to mention that I personally find this game very difficult. I think part of this is because I don't normally do auto-battlers, they're just not really my thing, I don't play them very often. So, although I do like the auto-battler aspect of this game, I think it's a neat aspect of the formula, I'm also not very good at those. I don't really have the experience with them to know how the strategies really work, so I'm still kind of learning in that aspect. But that's kind of a cool idea because I'm learning something new, right? I'm playing a formula that I've never played before. After a successful battle, you'll get the expected stuff like some gold to spend at shops, as well as the ability to add a card to your hand, or to skip doing that for extra gold if you would like to, if you don't like the selection of cards that you're given. And also, all of your units will heal for a small amount of their health. It's pretty small, but it does help to keep them alive. And also, if any of your units died during battle, they will come back after you're successful with a little bit of HP, including your hero unit. Losing your hero does not lose you the game. You have to lose all of your units in the field at once. So even if your hero falls and you're able to keep one of your other party members alive and finish out the battle, you will be able to keep going. There are also camps that allow you to heal your entire party for a small amount, as well as upgrade a card, so that's also very much like Slay the Spire. The heal is quite a small heal, by the way. There's not a lot of healing in this game. It's only like 30%, so it is kind of difficult sometimes to keep your party members alive. This is probably one of the reasons I find it so difficult, is it's a bit of a war of attrition as you go towards the eventual boss battle, going through multiple battles and taking a bunch of damage. It's pretty difficult for me because I'm just not used to the whole auto-battler idea, but once you beat the boss of a floor, you do actually start the next floor with everyone back at full health. There are also consumable rune items that work like the potions in Slay the Spire, although a lot of these have to deal with drawing cards and providing other effects like that, since this is more party-based. And there's even one called the Oracle Rune that allows you to just restart the battle, which is kind of crazy. It's just a redo button, effectively, which can be really useful if you get some just really bad draws and you just have a really bad battle and take a bunch of damage. You might just want to restart it and see what happens. It's very rare to find, but it is handy. And there's also a ton of passive relics that you can find, of course, that will provide all sorts of other benefits just for having them. You can find them from elite battles, you can find them from beating bosses, you can find them at shops, and from random events all along the map. So that's basically the formula. Choose your hero and your hero variant in terms of what they're going to start with, what sorts of mechanics their deck is actually built towards at the very beginning. So for instance, you may start with the fire version of the archer or the poison version of the archer, just as different ways to focus how your deck is going to be built. And then you will recruit various units that all have their own alliances and their own special skills that they can use, and you will eventually have a whole deck full of things that can accentuate these skills and units in battle to provide some sort of strategy to actually survive. And that's probably one of the coolest aspects of this idea, is it's like an extra layer of strategy on top of the usual roguelite deck builder thing, because it does do the deck builder thing, but also it does party building combat. So when you put those two things together, you get this sort of interesting tactical alchemy that creates an odd but interesting mixture of this difficult to master combat system that feels like it has quite a lot of depth to it, because there's so many layers of things that you have to worry about, but it also feels like it's going to take a while to learn how to not suck at it. Every time you finish a run, whether it's a success or a failure, you will gain some experience for that character, and of course, as you level them up, they will unlock more possible cards and other things that they can find. And once you get each of the characters to a certain level, you will unlock the ability to make custom characters and custom decks, which is where the game really opens up, and is, in my opinion, the strongest feature of the game because of all the strategy layering to it, and because of all these alliances and stuff. Being able to actually make your own from scratch is a really cool idea, and I'm glad that they included it in the latest big update. And I'm also excited to see what the next big update is going to bring, because it's going to have the third and final character in it, which I believe is supposed to be a mage-y, summon-y kind of character, and that tends to be my favorite playstyle, so I am interested to see what happens there. As far as early access criticisms, one I definitely have is that it's very easy to get overwhelmed in this game. There's just a ton of stuff on screen sometimes, and it's difficult to individually target enemies. It would be nice if the party member panes on the left side of the screen were targetable with cards, so if you were having a hard time finding one of your units, you could just drag a card to that pane and use it on them. And it would also be nice if enemies had panes like that on the right side of the screen, so if you wanted to target a specific enemy but they were in the middle of a huge brawl and it was difficult to target them, you could just drag a card to their portrait and then use it like that. I think that would be a really nice sort of quality of life feature, because sometimes, probably because of this pseudo-isometric angle, the battlefield gets a little bit cluttered and it gets difficult to target individual units that you might want to when they're all sort of bunched together. I would also like to see some modding support because of this really cool alliance system and this idea of recruiting new units from the battlefield. I think there could be a lot of longevity in adding new units and alliances and heroes and stuff through modding, so I think that's something that they should maybe look into as they get closer to release and more of the content gets like stable and put in the game as in a finished state. It would be really cool for them to focus on maybe some workshop integration or something like that, because I think that could really extend the longevity of a game like this in the same way that it has for something like Slay the Spire. But that is my current view of Hadean Tactics. I think it's a pretty fantastic idea just because it is a familiar concept and a very unfamiliar formula, and it's cool to see this sort of innovation like this. It's cool to see familiar concepts that I enjoy being taken in odd directions that I didn't know anyone would try. So I will link you in the description below this video to the Steam store page if you would like to check it out yourself. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.